If you haven't been to any TM editor office hour, I'm just here for the hour to answer any questions that you may have. I don't have any set agenda. Hi, Daisy. Good morning.
Hello, morning. Good evening. Professor Xu, I have a question about the review papers. I think last several times we mentioned a little bit. Actually, now I think the papers, the review papers in tourism management is called the the name is progression
Progress.
or
Progress.
progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we try to avoid those pure statistics and numbers, those kind of things. But when I look through some of the recent examples, even though we're not emphasizing that we're using systematic review, I feel those formats and I see those kind of findings is kind of generated from a systematic review. But the focus or the emphasis are slightly different. We're emphasizing more on the future and how this topic is like a trendy directions and how it's going in the near future. So that's a little bit confusion for me. So how, since some of my students, they have the intention to publish their review chapter, and one or two of them is like a very good one and in a very less developed area. But I'm thinking about giving them some suggestion about how to change and revise their chapters to be publishable in tourism management. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the progress category really is, like you said, not based on volumetric or systematic review. We're trying to look at that from a broader perspective, look at the topic, what has been done in terms of the progression, historic progression, and then what are the gaps, and then what could be the further development in the future, again, more from the theoretical perspective. So when you talk about a new topic, then probably there isn't any past. Then probably we don't have a progress paper, right? Progress paper means what happened in the past, for example, 5, 10 or longer period. Then you look at the progression and then look at where we're going from here. So it's not really for a literature review coming out of a thesis. Usually the progress papers are written by, not necessarily, but usually written by someone who has a lot of research experience in that particular area, have done research, for example, in a particular topic for 5, 10, 15 years, and then summarize what has happened and then look at the future. So progress is really a difficult type of paper to write. Yeah, it's quite different. Yeah, it's quite different from a literature review.
Yeah, I think that's also I'm a bit confused about. So should I suggest them to publish or try to publish, or is like for a well-established scholar in their own fields try to come up with some future directions for the new scholars to, for example, for some examples. So yeah. Yeah, maybe in that case, it's not a very suitable, I think, since it's a PhD students, but the topic is not very new. It's an old topic. It's a tourism gentrification. It's happening everywhere for quite a long time, but we don't find any quality piece of work that has summarized those progression in different countries, different world, and following different flows. So that's our ideas. But yeah, it's yeah, but it's not because the other teams have the expertise in this area for a long time. So that's something I'm considering about. Yeah.
Yeah, it is different from a conceptual paper. Conceptual paper is you develop, you look at a gap, you develop something, and you propose something, right? So for tourism management, the journal doesn't publish conceptual paper. The only category that does not require primary empirical data is the progress, but then it's look at more historical development from a theoretical perspective and look at what the future will be.
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah, it is difficult to write. And lately we had a couple of mid-career researchers published progress articles. Those are the ones you probably refer to, look at a bit closer to more of a review, whereas the original intent of the progress is really more looking at the bigger picture. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can tell that's really their research field. So I think they are very familiar with that area. Yeah. Good. Thank you. I'm disappearing.
That's the issue with PhD thesis, isn't it? You try to publish many pieces from one thesis, but then you have to consider whether you want to really publish a good paper, or you break that into smaller pieces and then each one of them only make marginal contributions. So it's a trade-off, and early career researchers will have to make that decision. I don't know how many of you are on TriNet. There was that discussion maybe a week or two ago about using AI to help with doing review. Now the publisher does not have any, well, the only guidelines for authors now is that if the authors use AI in any part of the research or manuscript preparation, a declaration needs to be made. And that's all there is in terms of guidelines. And it is on the Elsevier website. AI cannot be one of the authors. And if AI was used during the research or manuscript preparation process, the authors need to make the declaration. But at the current time, we don't have AI involved in manuscript review yet. We'll see what happens. One of the reviewers recently mentioned, in part of the review, mentioned that I feel like the authors have used AI to assist with the writing because the writing is not very good, and then the logic has some issues. So the reviewer spotted some weaknesses and then suggested that maybe part of the writing was done by AI. In one of the previous editor office hour, I think the question about impact statement came up. And I still see some submissions that the authors have problem with developing a proper impact statement. It's only a short 150-word short paragraph, but the guideline says it's different from academic contribution, theoretical contribution, methodological contribution. It's more about real life. What impact, what difference does this piece of research offer to the real world? It could be for economy, society, for culture, for any of the non-academic real life scenarios. What impact, what difference does it make? So it doesn't have to be immediate impact. It could be down the road, it could be long-term, but that's something the authors need to think about and write a proper impact statement, because tourism management, again, is a management-oriented journal. So we want to offer insights to guide management in the broader tourism area. And recently, I contributed to an editorial. It's really a long editorial, now published by the International Journal of Information Management. Actually, that editorial has, I don't know how many, dozens of authors. This is the first time I tried something like that, but they asked me to write a short editorial, so I did. And what they did is to pull all the contributing editorials together, and now it's like a 70-some page document. It is still an editorial. Basically, different people are talking about what does impact mean to their specific discipline. And there is a small section that I talk about impact from the perspective of tourism management. So if you're interested, you can take a look. It's in the International Journal of Information Management. It should be open access because it's not peer review, it's just an editorial. And if you're interested in impact, then you're welcome to read other contributors writing from different disciplines. Different disciplines will probably have a different take and different interpretation of the impact.
Hello, thank you. Hi. So great to hear about the impact factor, because I think I'm also learning how to write it from Journal of Tourism Management, also from applying a grant in Hong Kong. I think what you just mentioned is really insightful for me to think about how to write it, because I do a lot of data analytics study. Sometimes the reviewer will say, because of the data collection you have, I think sometimes by doing big data study, a little bit struggle between theory contribution and the practical implication. Sometimes I think I do make a strong practical implication that can contribute to the impact statement. But then the reviewer would say, okay, it's too much focus on the particular case and particular location. How, therefore, this study does not offer strong theory to contribute to the field. I was wondering, maybe great to have your opinion on that, to balance, when you emphasize the impact statement, to balance between the practical contribution and the theory contribution.
No, I think the impact statement, you don't even mention theoretical contribution. The impact statement, for tourism management, the purpose of having an impact statement is for people to look at it and say, now I know why you're doing this research from the practical perspective. So from the journal perspective, in the impact statement, you don't even mention about theory or academic or literature. That's the short paragraph to tell people what difference does it make in real life. But of course, for the manuscript or for other journals, yes, you want to talk about theoretical or methodological academic contribution, and then the practical. Usually we call it practical implication rather than practical impact, right? For some of the other journals, yes, they expect both. But for another type of journal, for example, empirical journal position to publish empirical studies, then probably they care more about the real suggestions that you can make for business strategy, for society, and so different journals have different positioning.
Yeah, I think particularly when I do this big data analytics, I found often we are criticized by reviewer that it's too strong focus on particular location, too strong work on the particular part that does not show a practical evidence that it will work, and also a little bit lack of theoretical contribution. But I'm still trying to learn how to enhance the theory part from data analytics.
Yeah, but if you have a strong theoretical underpinning of your investigation, theory should be universal, right? So if you have a strong theoretical underpinning of your study, help you interpret the empirical data, and it works when it works in this particular case, it should work in another case, because theories should be universal. So it doesn't matter whether you use big data or survey data, or survey data is also one-off. Actually, most of the research we do is one-off, unless you do a global census, which is impossible, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think big data versus survey data, interview data should make any difference in terms of the argument.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Professor Kev.
Hi, Valeria. How are you?
Can I ask you one question as an editor?
Sure.
It's not tourism management related, but it's just to have your opinion. Recently, I submitted a letter to one journal, on a journal, and I received 3 feedbacks. One, it was clearly a minor revision. The second one was a major revision, but okay. But the third revision was, I just received five words, was nothing new or interesting.
Mm.
How to deal with such a review? Because clearly the person rejected the whole idea, and
You mean the
It-
same paper?
it's
You
fun.
get 3 different reviews?
Yeah, exactly. I received
Oh, I
one that
see.
is informed that the paper is nicely toned, and there
Mm.
just some suggestions about italics and
Yeah,
some phrasings. The other one suggested some methodological review, which is a major, I understood. But the
Mhm.
third one was very just nothing new or interesting. Literally, I'm open quotes, nothing new or interesting.
Okay. All
Close
right.
quote.
Well, the editor gave you a chance, so the editor
Yeah.
must thought there's something there, right?
Mhm.
So I will just focus on replying to the one suggesting major review, address all the issues, and then when you
Mhm.
write a response to reviewer comments, and then you just
Mhm.
highlight the new and interesting points
Mhm.
and say these are new, different from the prior studies, and these are really interesting because this and this. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and probably the editor will agree with you. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be given a chance to revise. Yeah, so don't take it personally.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, the question in the chat box is, what types of research do you find both interesting and valuable? What are the characteristics of this type of research? Interesting and valuable. I guess for me, based on real life problems. For example, a business is facing this issue, a traveler is facing a particular problem, residents feel like their life being disturbed, or any real life problem can be solved by a piece of research. That should be very valuable. And if you can tell a good story, all research can be interesting. It's just how you tell the story. So when you write your manuscript, you need to be a good storyteller. Why should people be interested in your writing? Why should people be interested in your story? So introduction is really, really important. The first paragraph of your manuscript is really important. How do you raise people's interest? You want to make people understand this is a real life issue worth solving, and therefore you need to do this piece of research. And then you can talk about the gaps in the literature or shortcoming of prior research or series. But everything needs to, I think for me, come from a real life problem that's worth solving. Sometimes after we read a piece of research, we find that there's nothing wrong with this, but what does it do? That's the type of submission that's not really interesting, and I don't find it very valuable because you don't have a problem to solve to start with. It's just something interests you personally, and you thought it would be nice to find out the answer, but who else care about the answers? So I guess you need to appeal to the reader. Why is it an important piece of research? And you need to make the story sounds interesting. So that's my take. Others may have different views. There is a comment in the chat box saying that major revision is 90% successful. Could be true. Could be true. If you are given the chance to revise, that's a good sign. because I think we mentioned this in prior meetings that nowadays journals receive so many manuscripts, and for tourism management, we're looking at 2,000 a year. There's no way we can send 2,000 papers out for peer review. That's just impossible to have that many peer reviewer volunteering their time, because for each paper we need 3 reviewers. So if you look at most of the top journals now, the desk reject rate is about 75%. So the remaining 25% will go out for peer review. And the peer review comes back. The reviewers are very tough now. Very often we will come back with 3 reviewers all suggesting to reject the paper. And obviously those categories of papers will be rejected. And if the reviewers, 2 of the 3 suggested rejection, 1 major revision, probably that's a rejection as well. So if you're given a chance to do a major revision, you're already in the top 10 of all the submissions received by the journal. So absolutely take the opportunity seriously and do a good job of addressing all the comments as much as possible. There's no guarantee though. There's no guarantee that your revised paper will be accepted eventually. We have seen paper being rejected at the revision 1 stage or even revision 2, and sometimes, not very often, at the revision 3 stage. But as you go along the pathway, the chance of being rejected is getting smaller. So having a major revision as a decision is not a bad one at all. Yeah, somebody have 3 papers being rejected in R1 in the past 5 years. Yeah, that's sorry to hear about that, but it does happen.
Yes, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen. I got a paper rejected at R3.
Oh.
For me,
Oh.
not I rejecting others. Others rejected my paper at R3. All right. Recently, I got a rejection. Although I read the comments are not that bad, it shows that the editor don't really want it. So I think if the editor let you revise, yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes we read a manuscript and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not that interesting. Sorry, Emily, I wasn't talking about you. Sometimes we get a paper, there's nothing wrong. Technically, it's fine. But does it really answer a question? Does it really matter? Does it really push the boundary of knowledge? Maybe another issue could be the authors get reviewers' comment to authors, but they don't get the reviewer comments to editors. So they may have said something in confidence to the editor that the authors are not privileged of. So they may say this has minimum contribution, or this is, I don't know what they say. So editor would take that into consideration as well. Yeah, if your paper get rejected by a journal, revise it and resubmit to another journal. Make sure you revise it before you resubmit to another journal. It's a very small circle. So chances are when you submit to a different journal, you may run into the same reviewer. So don't take your chance by saying, this one is rejected. I'll just turn around and submit it to another journal without making any changes. That's a bad idea. So if any of you get asked to be a reviewer, please do help with the review process. I mentioned earlier in terms of the volume that we get for submission. For every paper we send out for peer review, we need the service of 3 reviewers. And if it's an R1, R2, then very likely the same reviewers will be asked to read the paper more than once or twice. That's a lot of time. So for every paper you submit, you can think in your mind that you owe 3 reviews. Once you get 3 reviews, you should do 3 reviews for others. If you were invited by the editor to do a review. And I'm sure you appreciate a good review. So when you are a reviewer, make sure you do a good job of providing constructive comments to help the authors to improve their manuscript. Make sure you log into the journal system, whatever system that the journal you wish to be a reviewer for. Make sure you log into your account and identify your personal classification, keywords. There is a pull-down menu and there's a list you can select from in terms of your interest area or methodology or topic, and make sure you click up as many as possible, but don't click everything. You click the areas that you think you have an expertise in or be interested in serving as a reviewer. The more information you provide in the system, the more likely you will get invitation that meet your expertise. In the system now, I don't know if you are aware, in the system now, there are 2 ways that journal editors find reviewers. Well, 3 ways. One is based on who we know, but that doesn't help very much because we don't know everybody. And if we only rely on people we know, they will be overworked, and then the review process will be probably a little biased. The second way is to rely on the system. The system now basically I assume they use some sort of AI to match the manuscript with reviewers' account information. So the more precise selection you have in your account, the more likely your account will be matched with a manuscript, so that when the editor asks the system to recommend reviewers, then your name will come up. And then the third way is for the editor to do a manual search. Instead of relying on AI, then we go into the system, we read the manuscript so we know what the manuscript is about, and then we do keyword searches. So if you have a good list of keywords, then we will be able to find you as a potential reviewer. So those are the different ways that journal editors will find potential reviewers. So log on to the system. For tourism management, it's the editorial manager system, and there is a list of keywords and classifications that you can go through. And there are sub-tabs. So when you click on a category, I think there are subcategories that will show up. Then you can select the subcategories as well.
Hi, Professor.
Hi,
Could
Gary.
I propose a question? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'm wondering, do you have any suggestion for those authors who are coming up with some ideas to write the practical implication part? Is it the more specific, the better?
Practical implications.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that's a tough area to write. Based on my observation of my previous students, especially when they write up the thesis or the first few journal articles. Yes. Well, 2 things. One is it should always come from your results. Very often, not very often, sometimes we see authors come up with lots of good ideas about practical implications, but they're not based on study results. They're based on their own ideas. That would not be a good way to write the practical implication part. And the other is, yes, you need to provide actionable suggestions rather than very general, because you can make general statements without conducting the study. So the results, the recommendation, specific recommendation should come from the study results. And if you did a survey, for example, the recommendation could come from not only the final model you have or the relationship between 2 variables, but how did you measure the variable? Then you need to go back to your research questionnaire and maybe to see, this item was measured by item 1, 2, 3, and this variable was measured by item 3, 4, 5. And then you see which item of the, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the most important, have the most impact, then the recommendation should be that specific. So yeah, practical implications need to be pretty specific. Otherwise, there's no specific relationship between your recommendation and the study that you conducted.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Since the implication, practical implication and the impact just mentioned, we mentioned before. So can I think about it as the boundary between these two parts? Is that the practical implication should be more specific, but the impact statement should be a bit more general.
Yeah, the impact could be more general. The impact could include short-term, medium, long-term impact.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the impact, if you continue with this line of research, for example, not only you have the current study, but down the road, you further elaborate on the study, repeat testing the study, and then do it, eventually you may have a bigger, because when we talk about research impact, we're talking about 2 dimensions. One is the reach. Reach means how far can you reach? For one particular journal article, very likely you have a small sample. Whether it's big data or survey, you have a small regional, sample. So the empirical results will only apply to this particular sample or even population. So that's the immediate short-term impact. That's the reach. Then for the longer-term reach, for example, if the theory that you propose or verify in this empirical context can be further validated in other contexts, then over time, the reach will become broader. So the reach could be from a city to a country to a region to globally, right? So that's the reach. So one is the reach and the other is the significance. How important is it? Are you making, for example, management impact or strategy impact, policy impact? How important, what kind of important problem are you solving? So one is about skill and the other is about how important it is. So that's the impact. Then the impact can be short-term, medium, long-term. But for practical implication, it's practical. What can they do now? It's more actionable. Yeah, another question is how to enhance the integration of research with industry. Primary focus is on secondary data. Integration of primary data in industry stronger. Well, not necessarily. It doesn't know the solving real life problem doesn't have to rely on primary research data. All the big data are secondary data. And the secondary data can solve real life operational management strategy problems. So yeah, the source of data is part of your methodology, which is not dictated or which does not dictate the problem that you solve. So you have a problem first, and then based on the problem, you can solve the problem by using primary data or by secondary data. So really, the source of data shouldn't matter. That is, if you have good secondary data. The challenge, I think, is sometimes we see people develop the research idea based on the data they have. So it's more of a data-driven research rather than problem-driven research. I think that's the challenge. When you have a research idea based on the data you have, rather than you come up with a research idea based on a real-life problem, then you need to think harder. What kind of real-life problem are you solving? So having the data available doesn't mean you have a good research question there. We can all play with the data. We can all do all kinds of analysis, but then for what? So we have to come up with the for what first. Is there a issue that we need to resolve? Right. So, well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. It's a good turnout, and hope to see you in March. Let me know if you have any question. You're always welcome to drop me an email. All right. Thank you very much.